Push that button there too. G'day guys, and welcome back to another episode of Encounters Down to the Live. Thanks for joining me wherever you're tuning in from, around the world, wherever. Thanks for joining me tonight. It's going to be an absolutely awesome night, discussing, one of the largest mass events of UFO sightings here in Australia, maybe potentially the world. I don't know. It's quite an incredible one, this one, because this one, it's really clicks all the, the right lines of, of an actual UFO sighting. They've seen some potential crafts in there, and there's a lot of stories that go with this. There, a lot of Chinese whispers there, but we're going to try and discuss the history of the last 60 years of Westall that's happened in 1966. 6th of April 1966. So I've got Bill Chalker, Grant Lavac, and George Simpson here with me tonight. We're going to be discussing this whole thing there. But guys, don't forget to go and click a like on this bad boy there and share it with your friends and family. And, it's going to be an awesome night there. But sorry, guys, we were running a bit late there. We had a couple of technical difficulties there with the audio coming through, as we usually do. But, the odd few hiccups here and there is quite normal. But anyway, let's get cracking into this there. So let's get these lads on here and get these buttons all moving here. And that one. G'day, guys. How you going?
Thanks. Good to be with you, Anthony. Good to see you, George.
Thanks for joining me.
We're all here.
We're all good.
Yep, Bill there. Yeah, you've got your audio working this time. Yep, we're all here.
Yep.
Beautiful.
Yeah, thanks for
guys,
the
thanks. No, most welcome. Like, thanks for joining me, guys.
Yep,
It's it's one of these probably a little bit delayed, maybe, but no, we're good. I think. Yep. All right. Yeah. No, it's a big event. This one. 60 years since this, this event happened. Now, well, coming up to 60 years, I should say, because we're still coming the end of March here now. But look, I'll run through what people obviously should be familiar with the Westall event there, but I'll just give a quick little rundown of what happened here. This is from the Wikipedia here, what they say briefly, just so I can sort of get a better idea of, so I'm not missing too many things here. So on Wednesday, 6th of April 1966, students and a teacher from Westall High School reported seeing a flying object. It was described as round with a domed top and white, grey, or silver in colour. According to the students, the object descended behind a row of trees and into the Grange and an open area south of the school. Some accounts described the object as being pursued by 5 unidentified aircraft. Sean Matthews was on vacation at the Grange and reported seeing an object with a slight purple hue and about twice the size of a family car. Some witnesses reported seeing the object take off after landing, and some reported seeing it hover rather than land. When students walked to the Grange after sighting, some reported a landing site, but the details vary between reports, where students variously described a circle of grass as burnt, boiled, or pressed down. One student interviewed by a local newspaper described a vague circular area flattened by the wind. Students also reported varying numbers of circles from 1 to 3 on 9th April 1966. On 9th April 1966, Air Force personnel and UFO enthusiasts visited the field but reported nothing of interest, and the landowner burned the field to discourage people from entering the property. So, yeah, basically that sums it up. But so, look, where do you sort of want to start with this there? Because, there's been a lot of Chinese whispers here. Lots of different information coming forward from different witnesses. So let's go, Bill. I dare say you would have looked into this pretty heavily.
I've taken a passing look at it. Yeah. No, I've taken a pretty deep dive into it, really, the truth of the matter. Yeah. And through George also, I got an escort down to the site and also met Victor Zachary, who unfortunately passed away recently. He joined me, just him and me, on site, where I spent a fair bit of time there trying to go through a a forensic type reconstruction of the sighting, particularly given the fact that he claimed that he saw the object up pretty close and climbed the fence on the what's the name of the street there on the side there, guys?
Brady Avenue.
Yeah, Brady Avenue. That's right. Yeah.
Yep.
And the actual Brady Avenue fence line with the school shifted over the years, and that came up in the conversation as well. So where you see Brady Avenue now is not where Brady Avenue existed at the time. It shifted over a couple of street lengths, something of that nature.
And, house block.
What's that?
One house block.
Right, yeah. But unfortunately, allegedly, the traces that were found there were obliterated, or, either by locals or gardeners or whatever. It's a bit of a variable story, that. But yeah, I kind of like Victor in the sense of the story that he told. Like here's a kid coming up to the fence line. Teacher tells him not to go over the fence, and what's he do? He goes over the fence, and then reportedly gets so close that he's thinking of touching it, and then feels heat, steps back, and there were two objects allegedly at almost ground level, just above the ground, hovering, and there were already kids over the fence, according to him, a couple of more. So there were about 3 kids over the fence by that stage, and you could just hear the others at the fence, including the teacher at least, saying, come back, all that kind of stuff. But as he proceeded to think about touching it, he stops and then steps back, and then both objects, according to him, rise up, and one orbits a passing Cessna, according to his testimony, and takes off in the opposite direction to the Grange, and the other objects took off towards the Grange, and apparently that may have been one of them that seemingly was reported as landing there. But he counted 2 objects. So,
right.
Yeah, but
I've heard a lot of people talking about 3 objects, though, and then the Wikipedia is saying 5 objects. It's like,
yeah. Well, this is why I think it's important to have a look at the story as it's evolved over the decades, and it's great to have Shane focusing from 2006 onwards, etc., and providing, the documentary comes out and it becomes a central focus. And there was the reunion back in 2006. What year did the film come out? The doco, 2008, was it?
Yeah, about there, 8 or 9, I think.
Yeah. So there's that documentary was based largely on Shane's research, and but a lot came before then, and I've been somewhat preoccupied with working through all that, the evolution of the Westall story over the decades. And there's this book here written by Cora Lorenzen, and that's a reissue, expanded edition of a book that was originally called The Great Flying Saucer Hoax, that came out in 1962. And then it was republished as Flying Saucers, The Startling Evidence of the Invasion from Outer Space. And it was pretty up to date, considering it was published in October 1966. There's even a familiar photo in the book, Jim Kibble's photo, but he wasn't named at that time. And
I've got that here.
the actual,
get rid of that. I've got that here. Hang on a sec.
Yeah.
Go. Put it up there. There you go.
There you go.
Right.
Yeah, that's it.
So, yeah, probably worthwhile reading the account on 273, page 273. Kyle Lorenzen, by the way, was the co-director of with her husband, Jim, the Kyle Lorenzen of the APRO group. And that's actually the first UFO group I joined, Kyle Lorenzen. I was kind of like a country member of the Sydney-based UFOic group, but because I was born in Grafton up on the North Coast and went to Armidale University, I had my own kind of ad hoc group operating through New England. It was basically university people. and eventually joined up with UFOic before I came to Sydney to work full time. But Carl Lorenzon's group, I thought, was a really quite a good group, well-established international connections. Peter Norris was their kind of de facto Australian representative for many, many years, and used to feed through stuff to APRO mainly, I guess, and Paul Norman did a lot of the feeding of information about cases through to NICAP. And NICAP seemed to be a bit slow up in the uptake, but APRO published the account fairly soon after the case, and this is the brief account. It says a round grey object with a flat base and a hump on the top was observed by science teacher Andrew Greenwood and students while it hovered and manoeuvred near the Westall School in Clayton, Australia on April 6. The object was first spotted when it rose into the air from behind pine trees near the school. Greenwood watched it along with some of the students for about 20 minutes, looked away for a few seconds, and when he looked back, it was gone. That's the extent of the account. Now that was probably distilled from the fragments that came out in the Clayton, the local Dandenong Journal, I suspect. Yep. And Judy McGee was responsible for getting the Dandenong Journal account into the British Flying Saucer Review, and I suspect that's where the Lorenzons got their account from, because they were in pretty close contact with the Flying Saucer Review, which was based in the UK, and that was generally known as FSR. Became quite a well-established journal of record for UFOs, flying saucers, whatever, and was kind of respected worldwide. Had a lot of wild reports in there, but it was pretty interesting. And I was getting that at the end of the 60s. It first started to appear in 55, 56, and so I got a hold of a whole stack of back issues, and away I went. But that's the early start. Now, there's some apocryphal stories coming from the likes of PRA, Flying Research Australia, that claimed that there was an early group that apparently accompanied Australian Army investigators. But again, I haven't encountered anybody in my time who is aware of those details. And it doesn't seem like PRA is sharing that information to anybody. Although I was aware that they were making an offer to two UFO witnesses that could verify that they were students at the time, and they would get an information pack from PRA, but that did not manifest to anybody as far as I know. Are you aware of anything, George?
No.
Put you on the spot?
Interesting.
No?
Oh, look, I've heard that story, and I've brought it up with John a couple of times, but the difficulty is getting him convinced that whoever's making the application for this information pack can actually verify that they were at that school, and that's been the hiccup, I think.
No single Westall school witness qualifies.
Well, none of them that I know of have managed to break through and get the pack. No. So right. It may not still be in existence. I don't know. I can ask John next time I see him. I can ask him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll let you know what he said.
So what are your thoughts, George, on this all? It's like, what have you sort of researched, and where's this sort of taken you?
With the Westall case?
Yeah.
Well, I saw some photographs that I used to be in Viewforce. I used to be on the Viewforce committee, and I borrowed their slide projector once. They used to give talks at the local schools and use the slide projector, and they had all the photos they used in their presentation kept in the little the cartridge, the slide cartridge. The whole talk was, all the slides were there in order, ready to give the next talk, sort of thing. And I looked through all the images, And one was a black and white photograph taken just across the road from the Westall School of the circular swell marks in the grass and in the bracken opposite the school. And that photo, I've never been able to obtain a copy of it. I didn't think it was important at the time. I repaired the projector and gave it back to them. I used to repair cameras and projectors and binoculars and things like that. And I gave it back to them. And
wasn't there a photograph of somebody who turns out to be Joy?
Oh, that came from another source. After Paul Norman passed away, a lot of his archives were collected by someone, I'm not sure who, but one of the members of the View Force group, a guy called Jason Cowland, had a lot of that stuff, and he had that photo. So we got it through Jason. He's going to be there at Westall too. I know Jason pretty well. He's a good guy. Yeah, he's going to be there. Yeah, well, I first saw it. I think it was him who had it.
Yeah,
so long ago now. I might have another person in mind. Yeah. No, it wasn't Jason Cowler. Sorry, there was another guy. I've forgotten his name.
Right.
But anyway, no, it wasn't Jason. Jason used to have a radio show over in West, right at like Diggers Rest or somewhere. West of Melbourne.
Jason shared with me a whole stack of stuff that he got out of the Melbourne archives, which mainly connected with early official files and stuff like that were kept there. And so he to do with Lord Casey and his interest in UFOs. And I was taking an interest in that, and he shared that with me as well. And of course, Lord Casey, he was our de facto foreign minister and minister for science for over a decade during the 1950s and into the early 60s. Retired, became basic Governor General of Australia, the first Australian-born Governor General, and had his own official briefing about flying saucers when he retired, and got one from the RAF in 76, I think, thereabouts. Anyway, for those that are interested, people can have a look at my blog. You just put in Casey, if you like. Comes up with a lot of interesting stuff. Casey had some quite extraordinary stuff in the archives. Most of those are held at Canberra, and I think they're largely freely available now, but I got excited when I saw that they were actually physically available, and took off down to Canberra and had a good look at them.
That'd have been awesome.
But nothing too much about Westall in those.
No, really true. Nothing at all.
Very little.
Wow.
Although he did arrange to have a meeting. Yeah, when he had been retired as Governor General, he saw an account written by John Pickney, and John was a really excellent literary writer. He wrote very well. He and I sort of came to exchange blows over his book Alien Honeycomb, but that's all water under the bridge as far as I said, and we sort of kind of chilled out on that years later. But he was telling me that he recollected before he passed away that he had this meeting, and I actually had files on it already. And here's Casey seeing an account written by John Pickney, and invited John Pickney to, was it the Melbourne Club, I think, very exclusive and highbrow. And there was some discussion of whether or not John would be allowed to come into the Melbourne Club because of his long hair. So that was the story of the day. Now, you got to remember that this was the exclusive club in Melbourne, and I think that's where I had one of my first clandestine meetings with Jim Kibble, and even I had to go through that kind of gauntlet. So they were a pretty conservative club, and worked on the basis of what was discussed indoors, never went outdoors. But I think that kind of rule or principle sort of really disappeared with time, I think. and a lot of clandestine meetings were held in those clubs.
Yeah. I've seen a photograph of James Kibble sitting outside in the garden having a beer with Bob Hawke back in 1966.
That was his house.
Yeah, in 1966. Yeah,
1966.
That's where that Balwyn photo was taken.
Right.
Yeah.
You've got a picture of Bob Hawke sitting in the garden.
Yeah, with James Kibble. Yep. I can't put my finger on it.
Well, that would be exceptional if that's available.
It must have been published or something. It's on one of my earlier computers. It would probably take me about 2 days to find it, but I'll send it to you.
There's one of him sharing a beer with Bob on a chair or something. He's got his arms, or he's got an arm around him or something.
They're wearing their shorts.
That was taken years later, though.
Was it? Oh, okay. I thought it was back in the 60s. When Bob was the leader of the ACTU before he became Prime Minister.
Right.
Back in his ACTU days. But James Kibble was a leading. He was pretty high up. He was a business. He was a business professional, but I'm not sure what he actually did.
Yeah, this was the period where there was the commie scare, and people like Whitlam were wanting to have some sort of connection with the opening up of China to business, and the Kibble family had very well established business relationships in China, and the Prime Minister of the day was Billy McMahon, who was variously described as one of our least successful Prime Ministers, but he was offered a leg in by Andrew Peacock to open up a connection and an Australian recognition of China under his government, and McMahon basically thought that was a bridge too far, saw it as ongoing part of the communist peril, and declined the offer. And then Whitlam, he helped facilitate Whitlam and early business people into China, and outdid Nixon at the time. So that was the 70s. So he's a pretty well-credentialed guy, and there's a photograph of a train trip with all that business delegation in China. It was the first one that went in. It actually went in before Whitlam met with the Chinese authorities. Bit of controversial politics there.
Well, a question for you both. Why do you think Jim Kibble's photograph, the Balwyn UFO, was so intricately linked with Westall? Because they're only separated by a couple of days, but a lot of folks, and James Fox is one of them, that really couples Westall and the Balwyn UFO together. You guys got any thoughts on that? Why it gets linked other than a few days apart?
I think so.
Go on, you go. You were part of Viewforce.
The proximity between, they're only about 15 kilometres apart and only a couple of days apart. And it was how many years ago? 1966? God, 60 years ago. They have to be connected. Logic will tell you that.
But then when
there was a more direct connection, allegedly, an apocryphal connection somewhat, but who was the CSIRO scientist that was taking an interest in UFOs at that time? I can't think of his name.
He denies it now, if he's still alive. The CSIRO have always been interested and always denied any interest.
The CSIRO had a very heavy interest in UFOs, and it was mainly coming through one or two guys. And let me just bring it up here. I've got opening up my blog page. Hang on. It'll all become clear then, I think.
Because I also asked that question because what's depicted in that Balwyn UFO photograph is somewhat contrasting to some of the drawings that the witnesses at Westall drew. So there isn't. You
not
really
exactly the same, you mean?
No, that's right. I mean, that's
Yeah.
not to say that it could not be connected. It certainly could be, but I was always curious
Interesting.
as to why, other than
Well, the students,
date and location.
the Westall students say that this saucer went up and then turned sideways and shot up. Now, that Balwyn photo, the thing is turned sideways.
It is, yeah.
And then
Yep.
shot off. So
Yeah.
there's no connection? I think it must be connected.
Well,
And that's consistent with what Bob Lazar says about the propulsion system.
yeah, that came
I know-
up with
I know
Victor
that's
as well.
Yeah.
I'm talking to Victor Zachary on site, and he said that after he saw the UFO quite close and everybody started chasing it over to the Grange, he went home for lunch. And I thought, that's a bit extraordinary. Well, why did you do that? And he said, well, I'd already seen it pretty close up, and I'd seen it before, exactly the same object, he thought.
Yeah, right.
And a couple of years earlier, very early in the morning, he's down at a local factory site before they opened up, trying to steal a pallet to make a billy cart, and says that he saw the same object then. But what he commented about, he got his pallet and made his billy cart, but he saw the object appear and it flew past, and again it was on edge and taking off. And he told me about a number of sightings of the similar object in the area. Now, I've got no reason to disbelieve him. He seemed to be a pretty credible witness, and but he had the anecdote too that he had a meeting with Sambleby, the principal of Westall the school, and Sambleby particularly sought him out and sort of said, look, I know you got a pretty good artist career in front of you, you know, and he was quite a good drawer and artist, and Sambleby advised him that you don't want to put this story out there, because I'm basing my advice on my own personal experience in Papua New Guinea. He saw something pretty similar, made the mistake of reporting it to officialdom, and it cost him dearly. Now, I'm presuming that was a reference to his own UFO sighting in Papua New Guinea during World War II. I don't know whether it was something else, but Sambleby ran the school reportedly like an authoritarian military-type guy. But he cautioned Victor not to stick his head out, and probably would serve his future career better. And I don't think Victor took it as a threat. He took it as advice. And he promptly pulled his head in about it, didn't really talk to anybody about it. But then by the time the Westall doco, Shane and them came on board, and everybody started coming out of the woodwork, he thought he'd put his story out there as well. And so all that silence after that time, he put his story forward.
Right.
Hmm.
Yeah, the guy, the CSIRO scientist in question was Dr. Burson. Dr. Burson. Now, if you go to my blog page, you'll see a story that I wrote back in 2015 called "The Wonderful Cosmic Tornadoes of Oz," and it's all about the UFO research that Bursons did within his connections with the CSIRO. And one of the major cases he looked at and actually shared his research with the RAAF was the Charlie Brew sighting from 1963, a very famous classical and close encounter in country Victoria at Willow Grove. And that's a very impressive sighting. And he took a fellow associate from the Meteorological Division, his associate, Mr. Clarke, which could have been spelled Clarke or without the E. It's spelt both ways in different documents. And the RAAF came onto the scene after the CSIRO had done their investigations. And then they found out that the CSIRO had been there already, and then contacted Bursons and Clarke, and they forwarded their information. And I think Bursons had come to suggested 4 different possibilities, and the RAAF just used it, the one that had the least likely possibility. And that was the one that said it was a tornado-like meteorological object or something. So it was a pretty wonderful tornado.
Oh, absolutely. Would have been, yeah.
Yeah.
Putting it that way, yeah.
So,
has anybody seen a tornado stop? I think.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I think it would have done a lot more damage too, considering.
Yeah.
Has anyone heard of a tornado that stops and then goes again?
I can't say I've seen one, so I can't really say.
Only in the Looney Tunes cartoons.
That's right, yeah, or Tassie Devil.
Well, I think persons dismissed the tornado explanation as a probably pretty improbable based on the direct observation of Charlie Brew, seeing a structured object rotating with a kind of a dome, a stick, or like some sort of antenna sticking out of the top. He had never come across a tornado like that in all his meteorological career, and felt it didn't really qualify as a tornado, and it had stability, and therefore that's why he said, tornado was the least likely possibility, and that's the one the RAAF decided to go with.
Of course they did.
It's just stupid, isn't it? It's just absolutely pathetic. It's lazy, really lazy.
Oh,
no, well, that's why I had a bit of a run-in with various people at the RAF at the time, or later when they were suggesting that they are winding up the RAAF's long association with UFOs based on the scientific record. And I immediately fired off a question: what scientific record was that?
Exactly.
And could you please explain? Yeah. And that's why I had a bit of a run-in with certain parties at the RAF. So.
I was once in email contact with a fellow who he was looking for answers because I was known as a UFO researcher at the time because I ran the Victorian branch of the Australian UFO Research Network, AUFORN. And this guy sent me a message. He said that his father and his uncle had a huge fight over the Westall case, and they never spoke to each other again for the rest of their lives. And one of them was high up in the Air Force, the Australian Air Force. I think that was his uncle. And they had this disagreement over how Westall was handled. They wanted, one of them was happy with how everything was handled. Everything was handed over to the Americans. So there's no record in the Australian records. You can search the records, you're not going to find anything on Westall. Everything was handed to the Americans. And these two brothers, one was this guy's dad and the other was an Air Force, one of the top guys in the Australian Air Force. They had a huge argument over it. This guy's father believed that the case was Australian, it belonged in Australia, and we've got our own people who can research and study the case. It should be known as an Australian case. But everything was handed over, all the data was handed to the Americans. And so that broke up that family, basically, those two brothers. I've lost contact with the guy, and I know he's contacted Bill as well. Have you got any other details on that story, Bill, that you can fill us in on? Because we've talked about it, remember that?
I'm pretty sure you're talking about the guy that was being assessed as a potential ASIO agent, and ASIO had actually visited.
No, this guy was saying that his uncle and his father had this huge barney over the Westall case. Everything was just handed to the Americans. That's why there's nothing in our records.
Right. Yeah, well,
so you remember that one?
The uncle was allegedly became an ASIO agent, and one of his first jobs was to be taken out to sort out the problems happening out near the Dandenongs. And the timing was such that it seemed to link him with the Westall story. And so that seemed to be the basis of that. And certainly there was the son of the other chap overheard this conversation. There was a lot of negative discussion about the Yanks and what the Yanks were doing and how they seemed to ride roughshod over Australia. And doesn't seem as though anything's changed actually lately, but
No.
it's kind of deja vu being revisited. But yeah, so that there was that story, and according to the uncle, allegedly, this is second hand, third hand, courtesy of the son who overheard the conversation, that well, the police rolled up. What was his name? Taffy was the sergeant involved, wasn't he? Taffy something.
I didn't have that detail.
It sounds like Alzheimer's setting in. Where is the? But yeah, no, that was
the contact with the guy. I can't contact him. He reached out to me, and the computer went down, and I lost all the details. And I wanted to get back to him for years, and somebody gave his details to somebody else, and
yeah,
they upset me.
I know the story behind that, and I guess we won't go there.
No,
but unfortunately, I circulated I circulated a bit of information, and unfortunately, somebody got excited about the details and contacted the witness, and the witness went to ground and disappeared for a few years.
Okay.
I recontacted him again, just to make sure he was aware of the fact that I wasn't the one that outed him, so to speak, and he then supplied a bit more further information, but he was still the main point about him was that he was upset about the American connection, and that's kind of
understandable.
But it also had an effect on the uncle as well. Allegedly, the uncle, but this is the uncle had a pretty torrid time being a member of ASIO, apparently. But that's not unique to the story that he told is the story that I've heard from a number of different ASIO people I've had some contact with, and then you start to read a lot of the personal archival stories that have been written by the families of or actual ASIO members that seem to imply a bit of a torrid time. But, there were also a lot of good times amongst the ASIO guys. And I guess in these times we do need our national security and that kind of thing. But most of the focus was on communism at the time, and it was always the Red Scare. And our American mates will help us out.
Of course, America, come save the world.
Well,
so let's go to Grant.
They certainly helped out with the Battle of the Coral Sea, that's for sure.
Yeah,
without the Battle of the Coral Sea, we'd be all speaking Japanese now.
That's right. Yeah, they've all played their part in the world, I suppose. Yeah, in that sense. So, Grant, let's go with you there, mate. Like, now you've got a petition out there as well to go towards the Westall uncovering from, trying to get some sort of truth from the government side of things or some sort of release. How's that going for you, mate? And what have you sort of researched into the whole Westall thing?
Yeah, well, I'm the newbie of us here. I mean, I love listening to Bill and George because I learn a thing or two whenever they speak. But I didn't really start getting seriously interested in Westall until, would have been COVID, because I moved to Melbourne. My wife and I moved to Melbourne from Sydney in 2015, and then I reached out to Shane Ryan, I think, and he suggested I get down to one of the reunion events that they have every year, or plan to have every year at the Grange. So that was really my my induction, was meeting a lot of the number of the primary witnesses firsthand, and then just throwing myself into the case and learning from the research that Keith and Bill and others have done, and have kind of been fascinated with the Westall case really ever since. So I've been trying as best I can to locate any and all records that may shed some light on what happened at Westall, or maybe what didn't happen at Westall. We know that Keith Bassfield put forward a hypothesis that it was a high altitude balloon, and whilst there hasn't been any documentary evidence to prove or disprove that hypothesis, I would love to be able to find some documentary evidence that pulls it off the table, so people no longer keep talking about it as a possible plausible explanation. But I put forward a petition to the House of Representatives last year because one of my frustrations, and I'm sure Bill and George and others would agree, that there is no documentary evidence. There's no audit trail, paper trail at all for anything connected to the Westall incident. And this is despite the fact that we can pretty much say with a high degree of certainty and confidence that the Department of Supply, now obviously defunct, but then the Department of Supply, there was a comprehensive report that was compiled by personnel at the Department of Supply into the Westall incident. And that report has never seen the light of day. It's never come to light. And the question is why? And so part of the petition was to have an independent inquiry launched so that the witnesses who have lived with this for 60 years could finally have some closure on what they experienced, and for the government and the Department of Defense to be transparent and truthful about the events of the 6th of April 1966. Now, that petition secured 831 signatures, which was fantastic. I was not expecting that many signatures. Obviously, would have been great to have even more than that, but that basically was then certified as an official petition, and it was referred to the Australian Minister for Defence, also Deputy Prime Minister Richard Marles, for a formal written response. And it's now been coming up on 5 months, 6 months since that petition was closed, and still no formal response from the Minister for Defence, which is very, very disappointing. So it would have been nice, not that I ever had any confidence that a formal independent inquiry would have been launched, but it would have been nice at least to get some formal response from the Minister for Defence, Richard Marles, acknowledging that there is a strong public interest in the Westall case, and that I think its answers are well overdue, particularly if there was this comprehensive report that was compiled by the Department of Supply. So that's largely what I've been doing, is just trying to utilise. Everyone has a right to information. We could submit FOIA requests. We can request records from the National Archives of Australia. Just trying to get any and all breadcrumbs that I can that might lead to another breadcrumb that might reveal some more information on what may have happened on the 6th of April 1966. So that's largely been my focus, not just for the Westall case, but also to try and better understand the Australian Department of Defence and more so the Royal Australian Air Force's now lack of public engagement on the topic of UAP UFO, because we know they've had a very long history with the topic since the years following Roswell to the mid-90s. So it's a source of frustration, but also a source of ongoing drive to press those that in positions of leadership and authority in the Department of Defence.
Yeah, I've got to commend you on that, mate. That's a lot of effort you've gone through there to try and at least get some sort of clarity for these witnesses, and let alone Australia's history in that matter. Are any of you actually aware that? Sorry, go Grant. You all right?
I was going to say, and look, it's better to try and fail rather than fail because we never tried. So I think it's important to exhaust all avenues so we can do our due diligence.
That's right.
Yeah, if you're not having
Bill, with your audio there, Bill, you just a bit of shit
and you're
in the back
not
of
making mistakes, you're not making decisions. So
yeah, exactly right. Exactly right.
Yeah.
Hey,
sorry to cut in there, Bill. With your audio in the background there, mate, have you got something else going on there? It's sort of just interfering in between, that's all.
Okay, do you want me to turn the computer off, do you?
Or maybe turn your volume down on it, maybe. I don't know. It could be.
Maybe try your headphones again, Bill. See if the headphones works for you now.
Yeah, just get a bit of feedback from us in the conversation.
Right.
Now, Grant, I've only heard of one document that's been found in the archives that was about Westall, had something to do with Westall. Judith McGuinness found it. Have you ever heard of that document?
Either with that document, nor have I seen it. So I'd be very interested
No,
to see.
that was a newspaper report.
A newspaper report, but it was an official report, wasn't it?
No, it was. I think James Kibble somehow mangled a few references and got, I think, cross-pollinated Ron Sullivan's Burke's Flat case with Westall somehow. But it might have been lost in translation. But there was an obvious problem with
Oh,
it.
okay. Well, that was interesting. The Ron Sullivan case was interesting, where the headlights bent to the side of the road.
Absolutely.
I was talking to Anthony about that before. And that was the same week that Westall happened. Yeah.
It's one of my favourite cases, that one.
And Ben Hurl went and interviewed him. Ben Hurl went up there and interviewed him recently, or in the last 7 or 8 years, and did a video of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
By the time
I was going to say the only really formal official record that I think we have pertaining to Westall is the reporting that the Dandenong Journal did a week after, and then a subsequent week after that. So they did two articles on Westall, which I think pretty decent, because I mean the closer you have reporting to the actual event, the greater chance there is of getting information hopefully accurate, although there could always
there's
be
a semi-unofficial record that most people aren't familiar with, and that is courtesy of Professor Bursons, or Dr. Bursons, from the CSIRO. At the time, during the mid-60s, the Condon Committee was opening up, and a lot of serious scientists around the world who were interested in flying saucers or UFOs were really intrigued and thought it was going to be a genuine scientific attempt to examine the UFO problem. And so Dr. Bursons wrote to Robert Lowe, the go-to guy with the early days of the Condon Committee, and made a few suggestions. And he makes this reference in the documents that he attached. He's talking mainly about the Willow Grove case, and then he comes to, on another occasion, I established the fact that a similar DA team, that stands for Department of Air, as the RAAF were known in terms of the official declarations, etc. The DA team had appeared so quickly on the scene of a sighting made by a group of school children and a teacher in the vicinity of an aerodrome as to make one believe that they had foreknowledge. The teaching staff were asked by the DA team to, quote, play it down, and the sighting was promptly ridiculed. Yet, quietly, independently, another group of people had reported the unusual phenomenon from the opposite peripheral area of the aerodrome. So what he's referring to there, I'm not sure, but that's a statement. And I know from Jim Kibble that he was saying, he was a member of the group, the Viewforce group, and he hadn't given permission for the photograph to be shared with the paper. And the story comes out, and I don't know whether he knows something different, but he when that story came out, somehow his name gets linked to it, and he was besieged by phone calls, particularly Dr. Bursons. And he claims that Dr. Bursons was almost ringing him every night to talk about the event and investigate it. And he said that he was invited to a meeting that had Bursons, who else am I thinking of? Bursons, Father Gill, and a couple of other people, and Sir George Jones, who was the former chief of Defence Staff, present at that meeting. Now, George Jones was pro-UFO because he'd seen his own UFO. He was actually he wasn't quite the first UFO investigator, but he investigated UFOs for the early RAAF way back in 1931 or 32, I think.
Wow.
Being one of the few flyers of the day, and actually investigated sightings. But there was this alleged gathering. Now, I don't know whether the Viewforce were part of that, but certainly Kibble was, and Bursons was. So there was a meeting involved in which
Bill, in 1966 it would have been the Victorian Flying Saucer Research Society.
That's right. Yeah.
Viewforce. Yeah. So Peter Norris was the head of that.
Yeah.
Peter Norris and John Pinkney started it, I think.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Well, that's right. Yeah. Yeah.
And how did that unofficial report that Burson did, was that on his own as a result of his own personal interest in the case for CSIRO, or is it?
Yeah, well, it was it was written on CSIRO Stationary Division of Meteorological Physics to Robert Lowe, Project Coordinator, UFO Study, University of Colorado, Department of Physics and Astrophysics, and it was dated the 11th of May, 1967. And there was an earlier letter that he wrote, 28th of November, 1966.
You'll have to flick those across to me, Bill. I'd love to see those.
Yeah.
Look at them.
Yeah. Okay. Well, actually, if
and
you go
yeah, I was going to say,
been on my blog.
That'd be on your blog. All right, cool. I'll have a look.
Yeah, it's been there since 2015. So.
Oh, okay. And obviously James McDonald too was the other one that we had go on the record with Andrew Greenwood. That was the other kind of official record of testimony.
Yeah, you've got to hand it to him. He did write up the Westall case in the beginning of Alien Honeycomb, and I actually thought it was a good book for the history of the subject, but interspersed with this story about Alien Honeycomb. But as soon as I saw the photographs of Alien Honeycomb, I thought, no, I don't think so. And I went across and saw a mate of mine that was working in a materials lab for Ciba-Geigy, and I showed him the photograph, and he cracked up laughing. And I said, well, tell me what it's about. Because I thought it was man-made, and he comes out with whole boxes full of this stuff. And then by that stage, one of the UFO Research Queensland people had actually gone to the same property and found similar material. And at that time, I kind of had some connections with Dick Smith. And Dick Smith, being a member of the one of the founding members of the Australian Skeptics, was interested in funding efforts to look at physical evidence. And the trouble was, I didn't think this was strong physical evidence, but he was willing to fund it and funded the analysis and came up with pretty much what the Ciba-Geigy guy was telling me, that it was man-made fiberglass components. Unless UFOs are made of fiberglass, it's not Alien Honeycomb. But it was basically not identical, but very similar to Aeroweb high-strength honeycomb, which is used very widely wherever you need high strength and very light weight. So aircraft wings, railway carriages, all that kind of stuff. Even door frames often use that kind of honeycomb arrangement because it has a lot of bonding strength, that kind of stuff. So it's structurally very sound.
Sounds like
you can use it in boating too. You can use it in boating as well.
Yeah.
I had a quick question for you, George. I was going to ask if the Department of Supply, if there was a comprehensive report done on Westall and the Yanks basically took over, do you have a sense, if it's speculation or if we know which agency in the US would have taken ownership? Would it have been the US Air Force or CIA, or do we have a sense? CIA, yeah, right.
CIA, yep.
That's what I was going to lead to my sort of next question there, because obviously someone's got to go and ask requests for freedom of information from the US side of things, trying to get information from this. Has there anything come out of that at all?
There has. So I submitted a FOIA request to the CIA asking for records pertaining to Westall, not specifying flying saucer or UFO, being quite strategic in the keywords that I used. Westall, Clayton South, and the response letter was that we, files that are in the holdings of the CIA, we can neither confirm nor deny if records exist, and if they do exist, they're classified and they can't be released. So that was an interesting Glomar response that I got from CIA.
There's your answer. Yeah. Could you make that? Is that in the form of an email or a letter?
It was a letter and email correspondence. I'll publish it on my my website, but I can email it through as well if it's.
If you could do that, that'd be fabulous. It'd be good to have that because at least there's some official record that we could print out and give to the Westall students on the day. Because
they don't reference Westall at all in the in their response letter, but I can certainly track down what my FOIA request was and the response letter, and so that can form part of it.
That's the closest. That's the closest they'll ever get.
I found that to be an interesting response. I mean, GLOMAR responses aren't uncommon, for CIA and no such agency, NSA in the US. But it was an interesting, response letter nonetheless. So, alas, the search continues.
I suspect there's going to be a strong CIA connection because back in, I think it was 1966, that Harry Turner's boss met with two CIA agents and with a champagne bottle and dug the first soil at the site that became Pine Gap. And so there was clearly a CIA presence in Australia in '66. And we have photographs of people involved.
There was a CIA presence in Melbourne, the Far East Asia, or the FE, our Far East division of the CIA. They had their Australian headquarters in Canberra, but there was a Far East division in Melbourne.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So, George or Bill, are you guys aware that anyone has tried to do a FOIA request in the past there at all?
Sorry, I didn't hear that. Two of you spoke at once. What was that, Anthony?
So, are you, George, you or Bill, aware of anyone trying to attempt to do a FOIA request in the past there at all, prior to Grant's one?
No, not that I know of. A lot of people talk about doing one, but they don't actually get around to doing it.
Yeah, Keith tried to do something, but I think he was also connecting it with Highball as well. But I think Grant, he's the master of the FOI in Australia at the moment. So.
Well, I mean, I've had plenty of leads over the years. I've submitted FOIA requests to the US State Department, the US Air Force, the CIA, the Office of Naval Research, NASA, records from the Atomic Energy Commission. So I've certainly followed up on some leads and submitted requests over the years, but haven't had any, haven't yielded any fruit thus far. So
the prevailing hypothesis of Highball, there was a suggestion, at least with one of the stories linked with Westall, but I think this is somewhat apocryphal, about potential nuclear fallout at the site. Well, I don't think there's any evidence for nuclear fallout, but there was some suggestion made by the lady that Phil that you were interviewing yesterday, Andrew. She talked about some fallout situations that were related. But that was actually US related, I think. Yeah, I think they were carrying a semi-dismantled atomic bomb, and they dropped it near Kirtland Air Force Base. And so half the hills around Kirtland were heavily irradiated, but there was this story of someone who put forward the idea to Shane in particular that there was some sort of irradiation problem at Westall, and it was a cleanup operation that led to the UFO story. Now, that to me doesn't have much in the way of legs. But
when you've got at that time in 1966, there were 600 students enrolled at the school, and the science teacher Andrew Greenwood said about half of the students were out on the oval that morning and saw the thing. So that's about 300 people. If my mathematics is correct.
I was hoping to get Shane on tonight there to go and sort of give us some clear information and such like, but unfortunately he wasn't able to join us. But it's sort of like, with 300 people potentially have seen this object there, you think a lot more people will be coming forward.
Well, hang on. Half of them have passed away naturally over the time. It's a long time ago.
It
Probably
is.
more than half.
Yeah.
One thing that Stanton Friedman said when he was investigating the Roswell book, the Roswell story, he said it was a race against the Undertaker.
Yeah.
Right.
But
Because the case was so long ago, and all the witnesses are dying one by one, and it's the same today. If you want to find witnesses, half of the people that Bill has interviewed over the years are no longer with us, and Victor is one of them,
There was that
was Shane Ryan's documentary Westall 66 the thing that really brought it into the limelight? Or were there any other not reports but books or any other video, television stories or anything that ever discussed Westall? Was only those kind of early books, Bill, that you referenced? Was there kind of nothing between those newsletter reports and books up until Westall 66 with Shane Ryan?
No, there was mainly people like myself and Keith that were sort of chasing down individual stories. You've got to bear in mind that with the advent of the social media and the internet, World Wide Web, it made connecting with people a lot easier. People were much freer with their contact details. Trying to contact, bear in mind that a lot of the female witnesses would have married, names have changed, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
that made finding out and tracking people, unless they were willing to come forward, it was a hard job. But we did manage to track quite a few people, but nothing of the magnitude of what Shane was able to get hold of, courtesy of the documentary and also the website. But
the website,
there was this gentleman. I remember circulating a limited circulation document about and involved the gentleman that you were familiar with, courtesy of your airport guy. Who was the gentleman? He was connected with George. You know about the guy I'm talking about, won't you? The guy with the coffee chest full of data on Westall. No, drawing a blank. Who was the guy out at Moorabbin? The guy out at Moorabbin.
Rick with the hanger.
Yeah, Rick, the other fellow.
The other guy.
He was connected. Huh?
Ron?
I believe so, yes.
Ron Cameron?
Yeah. Now, he was associated with some controversial claims about the Valentage saga, and I didn't have much of a strong... Yeah, I didn't have much of a strong opinion of him, but I learnt of his involvement courtesy of Dr. Ian Gordon, who for a period of time was head of the Victorian Education Curriculum Department, and one of his assistants was the head prefect of the Westall School back in '66.
Okay.
And he shared an interview. That's Graham Simmons, I think his name was. And he shared an interview that he had done with Graham about it, because he was interested in UFOs, but also interested in a very strange and bizarre way. But he got hold of our friend to do a couple of different documentaries, and one on paranormal trance channeling and all that kind of stuff, which was done. I've seen the videos. But in the end, he was also asking the same guy to do a documentary on the Westall case as well, but it never came together. But through him, I had this guy's contact details. I contacted him. He claimed to have a tea chest full of information. He'd interviewed over 16 to 20 witnesses, and that's how I found out about the Anderson family, through him. And I was able to verify the Andersons. And
how long ago
at least
was that?
That would have been during the 80s.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's going a long way back before I ever met him.
I've shared two brief conversations I had with the two Anderson children. Unfortunately, the mother had passed away. Luckily, I spoke to the daughter because she subsequently had an asthma attack and died because of that, apparently. But they're brief interviews, but I've shared them with the ABC producer, so hopefully they might be used in that documentary.
Yeah.
But
the story.
The only reason why I thought this guy was somewhat credible, that he had names and he had talked to witnesses.
Okay.
But he had a different take on what took place at Westall. But because of the controversy about what he was saying about the Valentage case and things like that, I was sort of keeping it at arm's length a bit, because it was certainly controversial.
He was talking about those divers that found a plane under the water and all that stuff.
Yeah. It became pretty wild.
According to Rick Wilson, he seems to think that that Ron Cameron has passed away now, he thinks.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think he started to put up barriers to me as well, because I knew I was asking too many questions, and so the tea chest full of information got closed up again. And but at least there was something credible there, and it provided a connection to one of the witnesses.
Yeah, okay. When I was running the UFO meetings that I used to run, Ron Cameron used to come to the meetings, to the ones that I used to run, and at the time I was getting to know Mr. Wilson, Rick Wilson. He ran a hangar at Moorabbin Airport, and he used to have an office in the hangar, and he used to rent office space out to Paul Norman. And Paul Norman turned out to be more of a headache than anything, because he used to bump into aircraft and damage them and do thousands of dollars worth of damage to aircraft by banging his head on them and stuff like that. But he was only meant to rent the office space, but he ended up living in the offices. And you're not allowed to live. It's not set up for that. Nobody's supposed to live there. But Paul virtually moved in to the office. Anyway, I was talking to Ron Cameron at these meetings that I used to run, and he was saying to me that he knew that there was an aircraft at the bottom of the sea. He knew where it was, but he wasn't allowed to go and get it. And Rick was telling me he didn't know where it was, but he had permission to get it. So I thought, well, these two guys have got to talk to each other.
Yeah.
And we'll see if there is any aircraft at the bottom of the sea or not. You guys have got to meet each other. And I took a photo of them together in the hangar that Rick used to manage. It's a historic photo, those two together. Anyway, that was probably 15, 20 years ago. Anyway, Rick says that Ron has now passed away, so that's never going to happen.
No.
Ron said he had many UFO interviews and many stories that he was writing and making about these UFO cases, and they were all going to be on a TV show on Channel 7. Nothing ever turned up.
Yeah. So
I don't know what Ron Cameron, I don't know where he came from, or anyway, he was acting like a CIA agent, just causing havoc wherever he went, basically.
Well, I know.
So do you feel like he might have been a disinformation artist, or what?
Sort of misinformation artist.
I think he was trying to seize every opportunity to become a mover and shaker in terms of being a documentarian. And I think Ian Gordon gave him an early opportunity, and he did produce a couple of documentaries, but these were not widely circulated and privately financed by Ian Gordon. And they were about psychic mediumship and that kind of stuff. I've got copies of them on videotape, but they exist. But I think Ian Gordon, even he himself, was a bit on the controversial side, and even he decided to, I think, sever ultimately his connections with It was Ian, wasn't it? Yeah. Cameron.
Ron.
Yeah. Ron Cameron. Sorry.
Yeah.
Ron Cameron.
There's Ron Cameron. There's Colin Cameron as well.
Well, I've kind of got to know at least Colin Cameron fairly well, but I never met the guy.
So what makes you think these guys coming out with all these claims of information, but yet they close up and don't want to have anything more to do with it? Like, why would they hide something that's so valuable?
Well, you're talking to a guy who tries to promote open transmission and sharing of information. I find it difficult sometimes, but people want to keep stuff and don't want to share. Yeah.
Because to me, that's just that's jeopardizing, the truth behind everything. Everything that we were sort of seeking to try and find answers for, but yet now it's lost in the time because, as we were talking about, these people have passed away, or it's being misplaced or something like that. It's kind of frustrating, really, that we could have had all these connections in the past that could have led us to something even more open, more truthful.
Yeah. Well, I used to call it the UFO bowerbird syndrome. Anything bright and shiny and interesting, people would take it into their own little UFO nest and keep it private. We had one guy in the early days of UFOic in Sydney who was just like that. And one thing, he didn't leave anything valuable like a photograph or a roll of movie film sitting around at the meetings that we had in Sydney back in the 70s or late 60s. I didn't attend any in the 60s, but I did attend some during the transition period where UFO almost died on the vine and then got resurrected by a friend of mine, David Bushing, who's passed away since then. But the story was that one of the old UFO people had this bowerbird syndrome, and I was able to verify it twice. And managed to resecure a Super 8 movie footage of a case that I was very closely involved with back in 1969 at Bunga in far north New South Wales. And I'd gone there as a young teenager and with the permission of the owner, who happened to be the local parliamentarian. And he was this guy, a local electronics technician from Casino, with a Super 8 camera taking films of the Bunga thing. And I always was interested in tracking that guy down. I eventually found him. He said, "Yeah, Bill, you could have that film if you could find it," because I originally sent it to UFOic back in 1969 and with a request allowing them to copy it and to return it to me. And I said, "Well, who did you send it to?" And he gave me the name. It happened to be a member of the committee. He actually supplied a signature receipt, and I went to the next meeting with that signature and the receipt and the documentation and put it to the guy. And I said, "Well, this guy is still looking for his film that you promised to return to him. Have you got it?" And he said, "No, I haven't got it." And then the very next meeting, he turns up with the film. And so I contacted the technician guy in Casino and said, "I've got your film. Can I copy it?" And he said, "Yeah." So I copied it and sent the original back to him, and he was pleased as punch. So, but the one problem was that the film canister, the whole thing, had never been opened.
Wow.
So it was to me, it was a classic case of UFO bowerbird syndrome. Didn't matter what it was; it was brought together and just nothing ever done with it. And I was astonished. I thought, God, but at least I got to see film of the thing that I had gone out to in 1969, courtesy of this technician.
Amazing.
Nice.
So he was.
Would it be as far to go and speculate that there was a bit of a ASIO or CAI interference here with these people who are claiming they got the data or information on more on Westall and that? Because I've heard a story there where Shane Ryan has tried to go and recover the news articles or the news footage from back in '66 when the news tried to go and cover it. He eventually got permission to go there and go and find it or check out the tapes or whatever, but the cartridge was empty. There was nothing in there.
Well, I think that was a recreation shot. I think more than anything.
That was,
just to show basically what had happened that there was no film in the canister, and the apocryphal story is that was it Frank Packer or wanted the film and it was sent to him. That's part of the folklore, but nobody can verify that. I had a cameraman mate that worked for Channel 9 for many years, and he one of his activities was to regularly visit Channel 9 archives looking for archival footage on all sorts of things, because he was interested in doing documentaries and he knew what was happening. He would stand by like a scavenger waiting for the stuff to go into a big dump master at the back of Channel 9, and it was either the stuff got destroyed or it got lost forever, or some bright spark would be there at the right time to pick it up out of the dump master.
Wow.
But you had to have
they probably didn't have the most stringent retention policies back then.
Well, you know, I don't know whether that was typical, but you kind of hope it wasn't. But yeah.
That legendary Westall. Sorry, Bill. We're talking.
No,
sorry.
go ahead, yeah.
That legendary Westall Channel 9 footage of the Westall incident thing. It was Kerry Packer who took it. According to the TV guys who were working at Channel 9, the day that 40th anniversary of Westall happened, and you were there and I were there, and there was those film crews were there, including Channel 9. The guy from Channel 9 was trying to get that. The guy from Channel 9 was trying to get that footage for that night's news spot. Remember, and it had been on the Willisey show, and it disappeared after that. But I think it was Kerry Packer.
Yeah, I told him to look for that footage on. Was the Current Affair that was, or the Willisey show?
Well, it was Willisey, apparently.
Well, I was at Mount Gambier in 1976, being filmed by the channel at the Pinnacle at Mount Gambier during the total eclipse of the sun, and they were there for the event, but also wondering why UFO researchers were here having a conference. Did they see some connection between total eclipses and UFOs? I said, no, well, you find that a lot of people in the UFO field are interested in astronomy. No big deal. But I remember doing the interviews, getting back to Sydney eventually a week later, and there the show airs, and right at the end it was just a general UFO story mentioning Mount Gambier and the conference. And right at the end there was footage, black and white footage, that showed, as it turned out, Marilyn
Eastwood
and her drawing, and I immediately recognised that as one of the original drawings. But that was the extent of it. I thought, well, if they've shown that, something else must be in the archive.
Right.
I used to watch Channel 9 News every night. I can remember seeing the Westall report when I was 8 years old, when that happened that night on TV. And it was really interesting. There was a flying saucer story, and it was from Melbourne. And the TV crew, they had some witnesses, two of the high school girls, and they were talking to them, and it got cut off. You could hear the guy in the background say, right, this interview is over, and the camera went black. And that's how they put it to air.
Wow.
That was Joy and Marilyn, I gather.
Yeah.
Joy and Marilyn, yeah. But I didn't know who they were.
Yeah, thank you, Joy, and thank you, Marilyn.
Yeah, credit to them.
Yeah.
It's great that they did that.
Everybody would love to see that footage.
Attention, I think.
Yeah, they got
Joy
attention.
attention.
Marilyn said it, but it was worth it. In the documentary.
Good on you, Marilyn.
That footage, it'd be great to see that footage. It was really annoying how the story was really interesting and it got cut off. And that,
I thought all that was pretty videotaping and all that kind of stuff, but you thought somebody might have had their own Super 8 camera and taken a shot of it or something like that. But maybe not.
Don't know.
So we're talking about how the kids are jumping the fence and all this stuff and running down into the Grange and whatnot. How true is it with the claims there? Like a few of the kids there actually went close to the craft there, and then potentially one of the girls there touched it or something like that. Went hysterics, got in an ambulance, taken away. The kids went to go and try and find the girl to see she's all right, and the whole family in the house.
Yeah,
a whole different family.
Yeah,
Colin
I think
Kelly,
it's
Colin Kelly remembers seeing Tanya in an ambulance at the school. He was 14 at the time, and he thought Tanya was quite a nice girl, and he was pretty. And he reckoned he saw her. It was definitely her in the ambulance, and the ambulance left the school with her in the ambulance, and she never came back to the school. They never saw her again.
Yeah.
And apparently,
So,
like the kids went there to the family house there to go and see if she was all right, but it was a completely different family. Like couldn't even recognise or. And I was talking to one of the ladies last night, Phyllis, her name was. She claims that they apparently had moved house prior to this happening. So the kids weren't aware that they moved house. I don't know how true that is.
Right. Yeah. So the kids didn't know. Yeah.
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 It just seemed mysterious, didn't it? Mysterious that they went to the house and knocked on the door. There's nobody by that name living here.
Yeah, because it just adds to conspiracy. Then, like everyone's gonna jump on, they go, "Whoa, government conspiracy here!" Government's getting involved. And just
that was all kind of public housing estates there at the time, from memory, and that there was turnover all the time, and that a lot of people were short duration. And it depended on the employment opportunities for the parents where they went.
Yeah.
So I guess that was a factor, but I don't think we can blame UFOs for that. I think there was probably a prosaic ending to that story, and she had come back and eventually told her version of what happened.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure Ross Coulthard actually covered. Was it 10 years? Said it was. I think he actually had her on the his Phenomena documentary there.
That's right.
On the part two.
There's no real mystery. There's no real mystery there. It was just a congregation of different factors, and I guess there was a degree of concern, and it got magnified basically, and and it certainly ended up as part of the folklore of Westall.
That's right. Yeah. It just goes to show how easily misinformation can be if it's getting into a bit of a campfire story there, and it sounds good. Like it really does sound good when you come and try and put together a bit of a government conspiracy, but it just adds more to the distrust on what we sort of like want to try and investigate into, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Do you remember in the documentary? Sorry.
Yeah.
Do you remember in the documentary? There's the sketches of the kids out, and they've done background footage to give you an idea of what it would have been like on the school with all the students and with the flying saucer in the sky and everything. But they used an artist, but that was animated too, so they were moving.
Yeah.
All right. Well, see how there's birds everywhere. I thought, as a result of seeing that those birds were sort of frightened and came over to the school to get away from the Grange, because UFO had been in the Grange. And I asked Rosie about that. She said, no, that was just something that the artist decided to put in.
Rosie told me that as well. Yeah, because I love the artwork. I thought it was great, a great way of telling the story. But, she did highlight that the artist added that as a flourish.
Yeah, and it's a shame that they did, because when I first saw the documentary, I thought that they were including, like, documentary, somebody must have said, oh, these birds flew away. They all lived in the Grange, and they took off and came over to the school. They were frightened by these weird flying objects. No, it's just this. Right. It's just been done by these people that, it's bloody annoying when people do that, because it's a real story, and here there's this new element of bullshit that's being added to the story.
And that's unfortunately how the narrative can evolve. Like you were mentioning before at the start, Bill, the evolution of the story over time. It can change due to subtle differences and subtle nuances and added creative license that becomes part of what people accept as the public record, when in actual fact it's an embellishment or it's a creative condition.
Yeah, well, I don't think you can sort of undermine the credibility of the witnesses that have come more recently. A lot of them that can verify their presence. They were there, and there's a lot of supporting narratives for a lot of people's different stories. But yeah, it's like any kind of significant event that, particularly if it's something that's out of the ordinary, you're going to have lots of differences. Yeah, and it was a large area involved and a lot of people, and so you're going to get fragments of the story. So it was, yeah, it. Well, I think it's a great thing that there's certainly a lot of high-level interest in it, and it would be nice to see the official documentation if it ever comes to light.
Yeah.
It certainly seems like there's been a resurgence ever since James Fox brought Westall to light in the phenomenon of 2020. There seems to have been a pretty consistent retelling of, or at least raising of the head of the Westall case in the public domain. So it's great to see such a historical unresolved case still have legs to this day and still have such public interest. And I would say that it's probably got more public interest in the last couple of years as a result of the discussions that people like us and others are having, and it's been since the conferences and the witnesses having their reunion event. So it's good to see it still stay alive rather than just see it lost to time.
Yep.
It is a shame. Yeah.
Luckily, it just hasn't remained as a fragmentary story courtesy of Channel 9 attention, because it's now been sort of focused upon by Channel 10, Channel 7, now the ABC. So there's going to be a lot of documentation out there, and there already is. And I noticed at the library event coming up next month, that's going to be sort of showing what worked examples of archiving activities and oral history recording and all that kind of stuff. And that's something that I'm really interested in oral history. But you need to have all the caveats involved. Well, when was this information first looked at, first seen? When did this person first talk about it? That kind of thing. It would have been great if it had more attention at the time. And there was a lot of anecdotal stories about D notices and all that kind of stuff, but it was just shut down because I think it was far too controversial. We can't have kids running around by the hundreds talking about flying saucers all the time. We've got enough problems. So we've got to sort out decimal currency as well. So we're going through that transition period in 1966. So
yeah.
So
I've got a question here from Lynn. So I wonder if any of the witnesses of Westall wrote a book or noted every detail, and is it still available? So less evolution over time. Any awareness on that at all?
Well, didn't Phyllis put forward a document that she prepared for her grandchildren?
Yeah, she's written something down, but it's not a released authored book, basically.
No. Well, I think I sort of tried to round up a bit of the information, put it into about 6 pages in the Oz files back in 1966, but that was clearly just the tip of the iceberg as far as I was concerned. There was a lot more to the story, and so there was that reference there in 1966, and then of course along comes Shane and company, and haven't really looked back from that. So I think the site is a wonderful thing, and it's drawn a lot of people in, but it's also been a lot of controversies battled out and tried to be sorted out, and a lot of people playing games with the site as well, I think. But they're pretty obvious, those people that are more of a problem than a supportive thing.
That's right.
I mean, it will be very interesting I'm really looking forward to seeing what Shane's going to put together with his book, because this is his first book that he's written on the Westall case. And I think if there's anyone that's best positioned to curate a lot of the testimony and information, and based on the research that he has done, and he's also sourced research that others have done, no doubt from you, Bill, and Keith, and myself to a degree, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what Shane puts together, because that will be the really first comprehensive publication on the case. So it'll be great to see what he comes up with.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah,
there's been a lot of documentaries in that sort of covering Westall a little bit, but they don't go and do the deep dives as like what is hoping this documentary is going to bring out. And there's a lot more deeper information that sort of gets missed, or for some reason doesn't get added, or it's being misinterpreted. Like as I was talking about, there's a bit of a campfire stories that go on with it more.
There are so many different threads to the Westall story. A lot of it remains rather unstated, or not sort of described in much detail, and it'd be great to see all that fleshed out. But there's a lot there.
Oh yeah,
there's a lot of different landing points. A lot of ground trace areas. I think there's about a dozen places that different people have said it left a mark on the ground. About a dozen places around the school, including just outside the school, over near the soccer ground, just near the golf course, behind the factory. There's so many places. This thing was up and down like a yo-yo, and leaving marks on the ground. It's an amazing story.
I know that various debunkers have used that as there's so many different landing sites at Westall. It's like Roswell. There's so many different crash sites at Roswell. That they use that as a wedge, but to undermine the narrative. But there are stories that I've come across. Like I'm a good mate with an educational psychologist that was operating in the North Coast, New England area as a child psychologist working for the education department, and his job was to look after the welfare of children going to school, or whether they were not going to school, that kind of thing. And he was talking to some pretty remote families all up and down the North Coast and the New England area, interviewing hundreds of families, all that kind of stuff, and getting background. But coming out of that process were all these UFO stories. And one that he remembered really well, and this would make it pre-1969, thereabouts, was one that involved a lot of families seeing a large UFO coming down a valley, and practically everybody in the valley witnessed it, and police were chasing it. And at one point, the police were parked beside a paddock and watching the UFO going into the paddock, landing, and jumping over fences and going off into the distance and landing multiple times. And they were in pursuit, but they couldn't corner it. Every time they got close, it would take off as if it was playing games with the police. And so there was all these apocryphal stories. That would have been about 1967. So crazy story, but I got it from this educational psychologist friend of mine who was there working for the education department at the time. So
interesting.
He interviewed them.
Did he see it? Oh, he interviewed them.
Huh? Okay. Well, they were one of a lot of witnesses were children. And
right.
A lot of families in remote places in these North Coast and New England areas. So, a lot going on.
Yeah. So I got Roger here. He's also asked a question there. What are your thoughts on the high balloon theory?
You want to have a stab at that, George? You're not a fan.
All I can say is, I would, rather than some guy like Keith Masterfield coming up with this theory, I'll listen to the witnesses who were there on the day first, and I'll take what they say over the top of somebody sitting in an armchair in South Australia making up this theory that it could have been this balloon. The students did not see any balloons. These things that they saw that were flying around, as they looked at them, they disappeared and then they reappeared in another place in the sky. Balloons don't do that. Balloons don't leave marks on the ground. I don't care. They might have, they were launching highball balloons over Mildura, but that has nothing to do with Westall, in my opinion, because I've got to go by the eyewitness testimony first and foremost, because I wasn't there, but they were. And they did not, none of them ever reported balloons. You wouldn't have people celebrating the 60th anniversary of a balloon sighting.
Yeah.
Let's get real. Let's
but,
forget about this fucking balloon stuff. Let's get rid of it.
Well, that's where I disagree with George. I think Keith did a good job in terms of putting forward a theory, and with a scientific viewpoint, you've got to examine the possibility and exhaust the facts. And as far as I'm concerned, highball isn't the explanation for Westall. But I've gone to the trouble of looking at it as well in a lot of detail, and it just doesn't fit. And the one single document to me that's significant is the Prime Minister's Secretary memo that's in the highball file 2 weeks after Westall, and they're discussing insurance premiums, whether they have to up the premiums just in case the highball balloon knocks that aircraft out of the sky or lands in a suburban area and causes chaos. And they said, well, nothing like that has happened. Therefore, yet the worst they had was basically coming down near a farm and upsetting chooks and stuff like that, but no real harm done. And so there was no reason to up the insurance premiums. And I thought 2 weeks after Westall, if Westall's not being mentioned at the secret level, it was classified secret, in that memo, highball wasn't a starter as an explanation for Westall, because it would have been discussed and said, oh, we had that problem at Westall or at the school or something. But they were actually worried more about knocking a plane out of the sky. But nothing else. So there was no major catastrophe. And there was a guy, a scientist with the CSIRO, a lot of local scientists and organisations were piggybacking on the highball balloon program, and he wrote a memoir, and he said the only time, as far as he was concerned, that there was a possible UFO sighting connected with the highball program was in about 1968, 69, and that was up near Sydney, and it was a very high-level event, like seeing an inflated balloon. And when you look at photographs of the highball balloons at high altitudes, yes, it could have been a possible source of UFOs, but they wouldn't have been very exciting UFOs. So just something. If you look on my site where I talk about Westall, that highball isn't the answer. That I use the comment, the answer is not blowing in the wind, like the old song, and it's not an explanation, but it might explain some high-level sightings, and that's why I'm interested, Grant, in yours follow-up things with highball. I think it's the next set that
series
might talk about sightings that might relate to my own sightings and things like that in the North Coast area in 1969, particularly in August, because I think there was a wayward highball balloon then, but it was all high altitude stuff, not low level stuff.
I would agree with you, Bill, and I don't myself personally invest a lot of stock in the highball hypothesis that Keith. I mean, I think Keith did a wonderful job of putting out there as a plausible explanation, but he'll be the first one to tell you he wasn't there. He doesn't know what it was. It's just he had a working hypothesis that he put out there. And to your point, George, a high altitude balloon that's deflating is certainly not consistent with any of the witness testimony whatsoever. So one of the things that is a source of, I guess, frustration for me is highball is always discussed as, well, this is what it was. It was put forward as a classic example of this is just only a week ago. There's a brand new podcast put out called The Conspiracy Cabal with Dr. Nick Coatsworth, I think his name was, the chief medical. And so he's just started doing this podcast with a colleague of his. And they're talking in the first episode, they're talking about the Westall case. And they jump straight to highball as the plausible explanation. And my
stuff.
Yeah, but this is what I would say. What drives me to try and find documentary evidence on highball is not to support the hypothesis that it was a high altitude balloon that was observed on the 6th of April 1966. it's to discredit it. It's to discount it. I would love to know what the fate of Flight 292 was. So if we then can definitively say Westall is a completely separate incident to the fate of Flight 292, then we can put it on the table, and it's no longer talked about as the most commonly spoken explanation.
One thing the chief did with this case, he came up with data of the launches, and there was a launch the day before. But look, when you look at the data that was recorded in those flights, there was a document that came out in a separate publication and from the US, and recorded the actual data captured by the balloons, the payloads. And the thing about the April launch on the 5th of April was that it was an entirely normal set of data that would have been captured by a normal successful flight. And if it had come down in Westall, it would not be a successful flight. That kind of data wouldn't been present. That, along with the Prime Minister's memo, the Prime Minister's Secretary's memo, to me rules out highball. And plus what the witnesses saw. You know, like, did they see a parachute coming down? No, if the highball payload came down without a parachute, there would have been chaos. A heavy payload impacting the ground, it certainly wouldn't have taken off again. And if it had been a highball, if the balloon was still attached at that low altitude, it would have deflated and it wouldn't have taken off again.
How heavy was the payload?
Yeah, and same with the parachute. You think you'd be able to discriminate a payload dragging a parachute.
But how heavy was the payload? Can you answer that? What was the payload?
It varied quite a lot. Some of the payloads were very extensive, but there's not enough information about Flight 292 as to whose payload it was. But it seemed to be still related to the American eavesdropping program on nuclear fallout in the Indian Pacific region. And that's all they were monitoring. So a successful flight meant a long duration flight at least 70 to 80,000 feet. And that's the sort of data that's collected. So to me, it's closed. I don't think Westall is the explanation for Westall.
Okay, I agree 100%. And I agree with you too, Grant, about being able to rule it out forever. Really good thing to do, to get rid of it for once and for all, right? But yeah, you're saying, well, we've got to find out, get all the data that we can, so we can say, yeah, it can't have been involved with Westall. But I've got to ask you this: if it's a high altitude balloon, who knows of any high altitude balloons that leave ground marks that push the grass down in a big circle in a 10-foot diameter, as was seen all around Westall, all these landing areas where that was the case. Channel 9 even filmed these circular marks. I know of one point down there where the mark has pressed the grass down. The grass was still dead there 10 years ago, right? No balloon leaves a pressure mark on the ground.
Yeah.
The whole balloon theory is insane. It has nothing to do with it. How could a lighter-than-air aircraft come down the ground, land, leave a mark, and then fly away? It
leave some sort of drag marks.
Yeah,
it just does not. It's just insane.
I mean, if you look at, and it would have been shredded in the surrounding trees as well. I mean, you just have to look at some of the photographs of recovered payloads from Project Highball, and you can see the parachute gets torn apart when it's kind of comes into contact with trees. So
that's what Paul Smith said. He said that to me personally.
I think we're all in agreement, but I think Highball unfortunately will continue to persist in the public domain and be the go-to explanation until there is some form of documentary evidence that completely can push it to the wayside.
Yeah,
there's an article I put up on my blog. but it was also published in New Dawn magazine. Unfortunately, they made a bit of a mistake because the article says the 1966 Westall incident refuting the official explanation, and that was all based on a report that was published in the Herald Sun on the 7th of August 2014. UFO all hot air, Westall was a balloon. Now, I wrote that whole article to debunk that article because there was no official explanation for Westall, rather. It was not an explanation. The journalist had taken some of Keith's research and poorly presented it. He misrepresented it. And so there hasn't been an official explanation for Westall yet.
Yeah.
So there's no explanation provided. There's no official government department who's made a formal comment about Westall. There are a couple of newspaper accounts that make vague references to bits and pieces, a drogue or something like that being towed behind by an aircraft. That's even less credible. There is no explanation at this point in time. But, I'm sure the government might try and exploit the highball explanation as a possible explanation, but they're going to have to present the data, and we've already got sufficient data to refute any official report.
Yeah.
So
I'd like to add too, though, on the balloon theory, that what are the odds of having 3 balloons traveling together, at the same simultaneously? They're going to be catching their own crosswinds, going different directions here, there, and everywhere. It's what are the odds of that?
Yeah, we've got common sense.
Yeah. And I presented I did a live stream the other night, and if you look at, there's some great research that a user on X by the handle of TPLoft2008 has done, looking at the actual synoptic charts and the weather forecast from the 5th and 6th of April of 1966. And if you take that into consideration, well, the projected flight path for a high altitude balloon that was launched from Mildura would have been inland in southern New South Wales. So if you look at the meteorological data that's available, it doesn't, again, it points to it not being attributable to Westall at all. On that note, gents, I'm going to have to depart because my little ones are struggling to get to sleep, but I always enjoy listening to you, your wealth of knowledge, Bill and George, and Anthony. Thanks for having me on, but it's been a really interesting discussion.
My pleasure, mate. No, welcome to have you, mate, anytime, and yeah, my pleasure.
Look forward to seeing you gents at Westall shortly.
Well, all the best. Hope so. Yep.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Come on, Bill, you got to get your way down here. All right, chat to you soon.
Yeah, if I'm not there, I'll be there in spirit. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, where is the for us? So there, look, I've got a couple of quick questions here for you because we're coming nearly to the 2-hour mark there, so we'll try and press this along a bit there. And so Matt's asked you. Oh, sorry, I'll go with Kelly. She asked first. Cousin Kelly, g'day. Has anybody ever taken any radiation counter out to the spot where the craft landed? Obviously, I'm sure they would have done some sort of radiation testing and whatnot.
Geiger counter.
Geiger, that's one. Thank you.
Yep. I was carrying around a dosimeter, badge, and that didn't come up with any positive. So. But that's way after the event. So.
Where was that, Bill?
Oh, that was on the day when I met Vic and I was traipsing all over the school. It wasn't on the day that you took me there.
But what locations were you looking with the Geiger counter?
There wasn't a Geiger counter. It was just a dosimeter badge.
Okay.
Yeah, so
what's that involved?
I would have anticipated. I would have thought that local authorities would have done a sweep through the area, and that there would have been clusters of all sorts of I guess, illnesses and stuff like that. There's no evidence for it whatsoever. I don't think there's been any definitive studies of any radiation fallout over the Melbourne area for whatever reasons, unless it was related to some secret project. But that's got to be something that's more general and not necessarily related to Westall.
Well,
there's no credible case for radiation being reported at the Westall site.
No, okay. Well, I know of 3 actual landing sites, 3 separate sites around Westall, where you could go today with a Geiger counter and check to see if there was any radiation there. One point where there's one spot where the grass wouldn't grow there for 40 years.
Yeah.
It's only the last decade that it's started growing. I think the council might have made a concerted effort to get the grass to grow in this particular spot.
Yeah. Well, back during the 70s, I looked at over, I think, 230 claims of UFO landing cases right around Australia, and I whittled it down to about 33 credible cases, of which were Westall. But in multiple cases of sites that I've looked at, I've had radiation detection gear, and I've never once come across any radiation that was present at the site.
Other than background radiation.
But I've never checked. I haven't checked whether I glow in the dark at night, so I don't think I do.
No, I could. I'd be happy to hire a Geiger counter to do some testing, because I know where
honestly,
the areas are.
To me, there's more of a problem of the high-powered tension lines being in such close proximity to a school. The level of effects from that would. I cannot believe that they had a school next to those high-powered tension lines.
2 schools, the primary school and the high school.
Yeah. That to me is extraordinarily unforgivable. I don't know whether anybody's done any studies of that, but I know that if I had children at Westall, I'd be doing it. I remember high-powered tension lines at a school in northern Sydney, and you could walk by at night with a fluoro tube, and enough energy to get a plasma going on inside the tube, so light it up, and but still that's below the threshold of damage, potential damage. It's really about proximity and duration. If you're spending day after day, it's a concern. But right, so I think that's more of a problem than potential low-level radiation possibilities of a short duration event.
Microwave radiation, wouldn't it?
It's hard to tell. What you mean on the power line? Well, possibly. Depends on I'd have to research that a bit more carefully. I don't know the details of what kind of voltages went through those lines.
And what frequencies?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's something worth looking at.
Potentially, yeah. So next question is there. I covered this last night too with Phyllis there. Matt's asking what is known about the military presence and the cleanup crew there. Now, we mentioned before, the military was there pretty quickly, as if they were aware. And Phyllis verified this too last night with her interview. They were there very quickly, so they are very much aware that something was.
Yeah, well, that's something. That's something that Professor Burson's got into. He felt that they were there so quickly that there must have been some prior awareness of it. And I know I've got this person that I've been like a deep throat source that I've been talking to for quite a number of years, and he says that he had some awareness of early files or remnants of files that were like markers to the Westall file, and there was some suggestion of an awareness of a progression of events that started in Western Australia, that progressed down the coast, and then there were reports in South Australia, and therefore the authorities knew that there was something going to go down in Victoria. And it's interesting that we have 3 of the more significant events that discussed: Westall, the Burke's Flat case, and the Balwyn photograph, all happening in 1 month. Plus, you've got the tank event that allegedly occurred. Now, I don't know how truthful that is, where at Puckapunyal, where they're doing live firings on the pocket colonial range, and a UFO turns up, and military tanks were firing shells at it. That's an interesting case, but I don't know what sort of documentation is out there on it, but it's something that Jim Kibble was describing as well, that he got from some of these sources. So, and he told that story to Jim McDonald. So,
yeah.
And that's where the primary documentation turns up in the audio sessions that Jim McDonald recorded. So there was a lot going on in Victoria in April 1966.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it,
like I know I've spoken about this in the past too. Like, you know, obviously the Tully Nest being a start for the 66 events, basically. Do you sort of feel like there's any relation to that as well?
It's a big country, Australia.
I know, yeah.
And we have vehicles travelling all over the place, and aircraft travelling all over the place. They're not all the same source, but who knows?
Yeah.
But yeah, there's 1966 was a big flap year in many parts of Australia. There were a lot of events occurring. There was even a closer encounter event that was about 6 days before Tully, recorded by guys bushwalking near the Penrith River. Close encounter of an object, looked very similar to the Tully object, and that was a pretty close sighting, and that was a few days before Tully, and quite a few other cases. There was a lot going on, but most of the more extraordinary stuff you find out about it often quite long after the event. You know, there was even a whole bunch of alleged abduction accounts taking place in the Sydney area and other places during 1966 and 67. And I've interviewed quite a few of the people involved. So, yeah, there was a lot going on, and we're only seeing part of the story. So,
yeah, that's right. Yeah. Too. Yeah. So another question here from Miss Shelley there. So it might be a bit far from what you guys might have knowledge on, but what's been all the children and teachers' health conditions in the years following? It hasn't been addressed yet, but you know, I think this might be a bit hard to sort of get a grasp on or to know.
No, I can't comment about that. There hasn't been enough of. Well, I think Shane might be in a better position to comment about that. I don't know. But I don't think guys are reporting problems. And Andrew Greenwood apparently was in reasonable health for most of his life. So.
Yeah, that's right. He only just recently passed away too, wasn't it? I think he's only a couple of years ago.
Yeah. Fortunately, James Fox got him interviewed on camera just before he died. So,
yeah, nice.
And Ross Pollard did that interview as well.
That's right.
A subsequent interview where you had him talking. Yeah.
I might throw that up quickly there. But whilst I get that set up there, I've also got. Hang on. I thought there was another question then. No, hang on. Here we go. Surely people would have seen these trucks coming in and out. So I'm pretty sure there was like, you know, the public around the school, like the residentials there, they were keeping a pretty good eye on this whole area.
Well, it was a pretty quiet area in those days. It was like a country area. There wasn't a really big built-up area like it is now. There wasn't nearly as much housing around there at the time, and also there was a lockdown around the school. There were roadblocks around the school to stop the press from getting in there.
Well, the Anderson family.
Oh, sorry, Bill.
The Anderson family. Their accounts were pertinent to that because they, I think, lived in close proximity to the school, and I think the mother was on tuck shop duty. I think the military turned up to the family location and were asking for directions, and they loaded up the mother and the two children in one of the military vehicles. And they went down with them to get some sort of locational detail. And
Yeah, right.
they were kind of, I think they were feeling a bit mixed about having done that. But then they went back later and found that some various things were being done to sites that they weren't too excited about. But they were present on military vehicles and took them down to the Grange location and the school, and the rest. They were told then to basically go back home. And
yeah, to add to Matt's question there as well, who provided roadblocks? I'm pretty sure the police were then involved probably about 15, 20 minutes later there, and they started getting doing their part in whatever's going on.
well,
the military.
There's reports there of the fire brigade, police, and apparently a lot of dark suits and
Men in Black, yeah.
So
Military,
something was going on. Maybe
That's
it's
right.
in that supply report. So
Could very well be. Hang on,
we know that there were at least 2 copies made,
yeah, that's right.
and one was destroyed after the fellow's death by the wife. That's the story we hear, and the other one was. You would think that something of that magnitude would have generated more than a couple of copies.
Yeah,
It would have been circulated like various departments, and probably the US is probably the best location to find out.
yeah, that's right. So just quickly tickle this up and get that going. Audio is there. Cool. So I just kind of put this Greenwald's interview segment up. So this is for educational purpose there. So no copyright involvement infringement goes against me. I'll throw this up there. That's
What do you say to the officially there is no government report into this matter?
Well, because they buried it, they hid it.
2 weeks later, knock on the door, and when I answered it, there were 2 people there, one in plain clothes and the other one senior Air Force. Obviously, senior had a good many rings on his sleeve, and they told me that I was wrong, that I hadn't seen anything. And when I tried to explain to them that they weren't there, I was, and I knew what I saw. And, well, I think the first suggestion was that you'd be ill-advised to go on saying that because clearly you were drunk on duty, and that will have to be reported to the education department, and of course you'll lose your job.
They were threatening you.
Oh, absolutely. I was threatened.
You're describing officials from our government trying to gag you from telling the truth about what you saw.
Which is quite interesting when you realise that officials from another government 12 months later begged me to speak about it. The office of the president saying...
Let's be clear here. This is the President of the United States.
Yes, the President of the United States.
President of the United States.
The President had authorised the establishment of a board of inquiry or an inquiry to inquire into issues of unidentified flying objects, and that they were sending out somebody who I believe turned out to be Mr.
I think it might have been a Professor James McDonald.
James McDonald, that's the one.
Officially, he was working for the US Navy, but in his spare time, he's checking many Australian reports of UFOs and comparing them with American reports. His aim is to see if the reports tally, in short, whether UFOs constitute a global phenomenon. In Melbourne, he's talking with Brian King.
Professor McDonald, what have you found here that's been of use to you?
I've investigated about 50 or 60 cases since I came down to New Zealand and Australia. Extremely interesting UFO sightings, essentially similar to those in the United States.
What are the main similarities?
Persons of really quite high credibility reporting unconventional objects, discs, cigar-shaped objects, frequently at very low elevation, hovering over sometimes urban areas, sometimes over cars, following cars.
I met this Professor McDonald. Basically, we did...
Oh, sorry. I just have to go and pause that for a minute there because otherwise I get done for copyrights of the old YouTube there. So, yeah, it's interesting to say that, the government's literally come back and trying to say, like, tell us what you know. So it's...
Yeah, it's controversial, that part of it, because Jim McDonald had a pretty deep history and deep involvement in the subject, and he was like a powerhouse. He certainly came in and got information about practically every major case in Australia that was deemed to be of significance, and recorded in his journals and did tape recorded interviews, that kind of thing. So it was pretty intense, but he just used that as a kind of a wedge in his attempts to try and get more and more interest in the UFO subject, and he wanted it to be funded properly and examined properly. But when he started using a lot of that data, he started to get into a spot of bother, because there was claims and counterclaims about him using the trip that was allegedly funded by the Department of Navy, and he was there for naval business, but he was doing the UFO stuff on the side. But yeah, there's a lot of controversy about that. I think Jim McDonald was an absolute legend, but was a very intense kind of extraordinary researcher. He certainly got a lot of information together in a very short period of time.
Wow. That's incredible. So to add to Matt's question here as well, police records, like we discussed this earlier there, mate. We everything got handed over to the US, the CIA agencies and everything like that. So there's nothing got kept in Australian waters as far as we're aware. It's very well I guess interfered with, so no data or information or any evidence of any sorts can be kept here. It's all been lost or destroyed. Who knows?
Well, yeah, we don't know anything with certainty. Things have a habit of being found, but possibly not in the place where you've been looking for years.
Yeah.
So it may well turn up in due course.
Yeah. Anyway, look, we're at the 2-hour mark there, guys. So, is there anything else you sort of want to add to this before we finish up?
I think we'll be talking about Westall a lot over the coming weeks and months for sure. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's. I'm looking forward to seeing the Australian Story account on it and see what they do with it. As I said to the producer, I'm amazed with the amount of research that they've done, how much they're going to fit into a half-hour story. I said, how about making it 3 or 4 parts or something like that? Yeah. But there's a lot of information there.
And they started a year ago.
I know. Right. I think that makes you realise that every Australian story has a fair bit of investigation involved in it. So that adds to the credibility of the Australian story as far as I'm concerned.
It should be a good show. It should be really good.
Yeah.
No, it's good. It's good that organisations are getting involved in this and they're trying to take it a bit more seriously, and actually are doing a bit of homework on this. And as we were talking before, a lot of things get mixed up and muddled up, and things get turned to stories that aren't directly true. So I'm hoping, like you're saying, I hope it really is narrowed down and is down the line.
Yeah. Well, I think there's clearly some parties in some sort of organisation at a governmental level back in '66 that knows a lot more about what went on at Westall than we do. We might have stumbled across fragments of the story, but it's a hell of a jigsaw puzzle, but it's one that's absolutely fascinating, and it's going to be interesting. I think the fallout on Westall over the coming months, it'll be interesting to see what emerges. Hopefully something of interest beyond what we already know.
That's it. Quick message here from Grant there saying, many thanks for the thought-provoking conversation, gents. Apologies for the early exit. No, it's all good, mate. Understandable. Got to look after the little ones there and help the old mum out when things are getting tough. So all good, mate. Thanks for joining us again, mate. It's absolutely wonderful having you on. All right, George, do you want to go and do a bit of a blog, mate? Where are you still open to UFO research in there, or people come reach out to you and whatnot?
It happens sometimes. I haven't run any meetings now since about 2014. So it's over 10 years since I stopped running the meetings, and AUFON sort of, like a lot of UFO groups, it came and went. You know, these groups, people start them up and then they move on and do other things, and new groups form, and they come and go all the time. So I was the Victorian director for Victoria for that organisation, which doesn't exist anymore. So I don't really go out of my way to look for anything. Some people would like to report things to me, but there's no way to publish it like I used to, because the magazine isn't around anymore. You know, so I'm happy to close that chapter, and if I come across interesting stories, I'll maybe put them on YouTube or something, or on Facebook. But I'm not really. There's a local group, a CE5 group, that I've been to only one of their meetings, and they do some interesting things. But they have their meetings a long way away. It's a really long drive. Usually, they go to different places all around Victoria, and some of them are 5 or 6 hour drives. I'm just not interested in going to do something that you could do in your own backyard, essentially. Keep your eye on the sky, and but look, I'm interested in what's going to happen now that President Trump has said that they're going to release all the files, and then 2 days later he starts attacking Iran, and he's moved on already. I mean, is anything going to come out of it? Are the files ever going to be released? I mean, he's made that statement. That was a presidential disclosure announcement, and it was a very, very full announcement. It was a very comprehensive announcement, and it covered everything. And there's nothing so far, nothing.
No. Yeah. A lot of people want to claim it's like a bit of a distraction from the Epstein files and whatnot. And it could very well be, but as I said, that was a very official sort of post.
But it's been made, and who knows? I mean, by the end of the year, there might be a lot more stuff available, not covered up. I don't know. I don't know, but I mean,
we might be able to get a better bit of a request for the FOIA on Westall. If that's there, they've got it. We might get an unclassified version.
I doubt that the CIA would have even kept those files. They would have destroyed it years ago, I reckon.
Yeah, potentially.
Why keep it? Why bother? It's only Australia. It's only an Australian case. Who cares?
Right.
I'm being realistic. I think I'm being realistic.
Yeah.
Hello? Yep.
Hello. Yeah, I got you there.
Yeah, I think I'm still on mute.
No, I'm muted. You're all good.
Yeah. One of the interesting things about Iran was that back in 1976, with the fall of the Shah of Iran, it was the focus of a major UFO sighting encounter between Iranian jets and UFOs, and this was recorded by the it was in the files of the Defence Intelligence Agency, and widely regarded in the intelligence community as one of the best UFO encounter stories on record at that time. So that was occurring just prior to the fall of the Shah, and so very interesting case. So people should look that up as a matter of history. It's pretty well documented these days, and it's accessible. So, but with Westall, 10 years earlier, you have a lot more witnesses, and it's certainly enjoying its time in public perception. And I hope that the witnesses involved feel vindicated in some way with regard to the attention that it's receiving. It's I think a very important case, and clearly part of a major flap year across Australia and indeed many parts of the world. And that was repeated again in 69, and 72, 75, a bit of a pattern there, 78. But then that pattern sort of fell away. So something was occurring on a pretty regular interval, at least in Australia.
Yeah, it always seems to be like a, like you said, like the things are, like especially nowadays, like back in the day, there was always UFO reports and sightings and encounters and such like that. But now, these days, it seems very quiet and very.
Well, I think we're gifted by the fact that the internet is part of the problem. That people have many different ways of reporting things, and quite often that information ends up in diverse parts and places, and sometimes doesn't feed into a central repository of information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's fair enough. So, Bill, obviously, you're still open to investigations and reports and such like. So, where can people reach you if you're still open to it?
Well, either via guys like you and Roger and others, they all know where I am, and people can contact me through that or through my blog and all that kind of stuff. And so I'm still interested in the phenomenon, and despite the fact that I've been involved in it for many decades, I'm still fascinated by it.
That's right. That's right. I'll put a link in the description there anyway, so where people can go and find your blog and get in contact with if they need to. And but yeah, guys, thank you so much tonight. It's been absolutely awesome having you on there, and thanks to Grant joining us as well. It's been a real great in-depth mindset on the 6 decades of Westall, basically.
Yeah. Yep. Well, it's going to be an interesting time over the coming month or two.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, you guys, George, you're going to go to the event, aren't you? Are you going to both events or just the one at the Grange and the one at the library?
Yeah, I'll go to both. Yeah.
Yep. Right. So people, if they're in the area, there definitely go to the event there, and you can go and catch up with George and speak to him himself there. Bill, you're hoping to get down
and if
there
I make
well,
it down to Melbourne, I'll be doing it.
Sorry, it's a bit of delay there.
Yep. I hope so. Yep.
Did you say, Bill? Did you say if you get to Melbourne?
Everything's getting expensive at the moment. Fuel going up and availability of fuel, so it looks like public travel is possibly the only way going down there, and flights might be hideously expensive by then. And driving down is going to be a bit of a problem as well in terms of availability of fuel. So it's going to be a bit of a colourful thing. But I think a lot of people's Easter prior to that, 1 week prior, is going to be affected somewhat as well. So, yeah, interesting times. But I'm sure that people in Melbourne should enjoy themselves.
The train's the way to go, Bill.
Yeah,
definitely. And look, I think we're going to look at a new mic and camera system there for you there, Bill.
Good on you. Yeah. Welcome to any donation. All right.
No, all good. All right, thanks, guys, for joining me, mate. Absolutely wonderful again having you. So thanks, guys. Catch you later.
Good on you. Okay. See you.
Oh, thanks, guys, for joining me. It's been a long evening there, but we've gone a full in-depth history there with Westall overall. 6 decades of Westall. That's, it's a long time, and all these people that have witnessed this amazing encounter still haven't got any closure, and it's very unfortunate that that's been the case. As we all know, government conspiracies lead on as they do, and whether or not we get the answers, here's hoping, I guess, really. But anyway, guys, I'm not going to babble on too much there because I'm bad for it when it comes to opening or closing these things up. But thanks to everyone in the chats there. I can't go through everyone's chats names there in the chats there, but thank you so much there for coming in and listening to us all, and getting in the chat there and asking questions there. It's absolutely amazing having you here joining us again there. So thank you very much. Don't forget to go on smack a like on this bad boy there. Share it to your friends and family as well. Also, if you want to help support the podcast there or the channel, we have got an online store there. We get some awesome t-shirts like this there, and some other merchandise as well. Just helps support the channel there, and keeps us going along a little bit there. But otherwise, guys, most you can do for me is just share it to your friends and family and just hit a like there. That's all I can really ask more of from is. But otherwise, yeah, guys, again, thank you so much for joining me. It's wonderful. Anyway, I'm gonna go. Catch you later, and all the best, and until next time, mate.